Shadow work is diving into your unconscious mind and uncovering hidden and repressed parts of yourself so that you can heal them and become more whole. I want you to know that before we get into this, there is a super quick disclaimer, which is this is not professional mental health advice. This is subjective experiential advice. If you need genuine mental health support, please go to a medical professional. Great. So now let's get into the video. When you decide to quit pornography, you realize some really big things. For example, one really big thing that you realize is that just quitting pornography and never thinking about it ever again is not a very intelligent thing to do, because a lot of your trauma and past still remains unresolved and uninvestigated. So what would be a wiser option is to be open to doing some shadow work. Shadow work is all about bringing light or attention or awareness to your own inner darkness, which is the repressed parts of yourself, the rejected parts of yourself. But in order to do this work, there's a few things that you need. And these things include, you need to be psychologically stable. You need to be emotionally ready. And you need to have some balls, because you're about to answer some questions which are very difficult to answer. Which brings us to our first and central theme of this video, which is shadow work is hard. People don't like doing shadow work. People will do anything, but they won't do shadow work. But we'll come to that a little bit later on. So, how do you use shadow work to heal your past pornography addiction? Well, assuming that you've already done some work with breaking away from PMO, I would suggest that you begin by opening up your psyche and your past by exploring the following questions. Why did you have a need for PMO in the first place? How did PMO lure you in? Why was it so difficult to quit? And how did it shape your mind when you used it? So to tackle the first one, why did you have a need for it? And right away, you'll notice that the answer to this question is not some logical, practical, or physical thing like, I was just bored all the time, or I didn't have anything better to do. No, that's not digging deep enough. That's not doing true shadow work. What I want you to do is to answer this question. What was the emotional reason for using this pornography as a crutch? And I've got some news for you. We are already circling back to our main theme of the video, which is people don't like doing shadow work. Shadow work is tough. It is emotionally difficult, confrontational work that requires radical self-honesty, which the average person is going to do everything they can to avoid. No shadow work for me, please, says the average person. So, identifying the deeper emotional reason why you use or used PMO is something that requires real and genuine self-honesty, which most people are simply not interested in, because it will take time, it will take willingness, and it will show you just how badly you want to quit, because the answer will surface. It's just about whether you have the strength and the awareness to accept it. And on that note, consider this. If you've clicked on this video and you are listening to this with an open mind, I commend you, for you are one of the brave ones. And you might not even be ready to start doing some of this shadow work properly. But what you do have is you have the intuition and you have the courage just to be open to these words right now, which automatically sets you apart from those who are blocking their ears, turning away, and saying, no, I'm good. Shadow work for some people, not for me. I'm good, thanks. Be very careful if you're having this reaction. This shows that the mind is still resisting. The key is to not try and fight it. It is to go with it. And at the very beginning, it is just about noticing it. So the next point about shadow work is the deeper you look, the harder it will be to accept what you see. And just as you begin doing this work, what will spring up is a hell of a lot of resistance that says, whoa, 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 what are you doing? This feels very uncomfortable. Let's stop this right away. Which once again brings us back to our favorite theme. You already know it. It is that shadow work is tough. People hate shadow work because people are egos, and egos have a really tough time accepting the truth. Which is why, before you start doing all of this shadow work properly, I suggest that you begin with this one simple thing, which is nice, gentle, and easy. And that thing is to start realizing that you might be hiding some things from yourself. Things that you don't want to look at. The thing is, this is not a maybe that you're doing this. It is a question of how much are you doing this? Because your mind, and everyone's mind, has a reflex to repress and push down the things that are unpleasant. So realize that no one is immune. Everyone has this work to do because everyone has a mind to deal with. But the reality is with this shadow work is who in the world would want to look at all of the bad stuff within themselves and then spend ages working on integrating all of that? No one. Because that would be very uncomfortable to the ego. Can you see the effect of this in our society? For example, with how popular consumption is, with how popular stimulation is. Because when you consume and when you stimulate your mind, you don't need to look within. Because you're already distracting yourself. You are distracting your consciousness. Pornography is the perfect example of this because you have this easy, accessible pleasure which pacifies the difficult emotions within. And then once you are finished with the PMO, the mind is so numb that it doesn't even feel capable of looking inside itself. Because in order to look inside of yourself, you need high awareness and high consciousness, which has subsequently been numbed by the PMO. To top this off, the mind, after using PMO, is full of inner resistance. So even if you wanted to do some shadow work, your mind is going to make it near impossible for you to do that. And it will reject all the attempts that you make at making positive changes. Because once the mind is hooked on this drug of pornography, it wants to stay in its safe, familiar, and habitual patterns of comfort. And the sad and difficult thing about this is that the more and more pornography that is used, the harder and harder it becomes to quit. Because one pushes the truth down deeper and deeper and further into that darkness, making it near impossible to get yourself out. This is why you should come to this work only when you are really ready. Because you cannot quit until you're really done. Until you get to that point where you're really, truly done and sick of it. You can never go back. I would suggest that it should only really take some proper brain fog, some anxiety, to make you realize how much you do not want this in your life and in your reality. And how much better off your life will be as you move into this direction of truth, self-honesty, and self-discipline. The next point about this shadow work and doing this shadow work is that you don't need to confront it all at once. In fact, you don't need to confront any of it right now. Again, just to begin with, realize that there are things that you hide from yourself and that are preventing you from growing. Our goal with this work is to feel totally and utterly weightless, like you have nothing to hide, because you don't. You can be completely transparent with yourself once you quit, because every single part of you knows and reflects your healing process, that you have healed the darkness within yourself. It is just worlds apart from what it was before. It really is a radical difference. So this shadow work, only do it and only approach it if you are serious about changing your life and becoming the best version of yourself. Otherwise, It is simply not useful. Also, I want you to know that if you're on this journey and you do slip up and use pornography again, that is completely okay. And I want you to give yourself a lot of grace, a lot of love, and a lot of understanding. Because this path is not easy. It is not smooth and linear. It is rocky and emotionally tough. Let yourself move through this process of healing and of growth by making mistakes, by learning from them, and by integrating them. And integrating perhaps the biggest lesson to learn, which is you don't need to go back. You don't need to do it. And instead you can grow strong, free, and independent of your lower desires, which of course bring out the lower self in you. Instead, your life can be full of freedom and can just be a game of your higher self flourishing. This is where the work becomes very enjoyable. So be patient and know that if you really truly want to quit and you're set on that and you've set the intention, at the end of the day, you do make it out and you do turn your life around and you will start feeling the peace inwardly. And man, is it worth it. So, if you've enjoyed this video and you would like some more, then please do subscribe.